Well, I'm excited to be back, and there's some crazy different things going on in the real estate market right now, and I thought I'd just rattle off a few today because there's not a day that goes by that something that doesn't make you raise an eyebrow just a little bit happens. So right now, the whole short-term rental Airbnb thing continues to evolve, and it's getting interesting. If you were doing a case study on this, chances are most people that were doing short-term rentals were just doing it kind of quietly, probably using a site, like Airbnb or one of the other portals that are out there. They may or may not have gotten the licensing through the city or the county or the municipalities, the state, or some of these registration companies. And it was, probably not policed aggressively or easily, staffing, shortage, time, things like that. It's when there's a lot of something and only a few people trying to keep an eye on it. Well, we know what happens. And what's interesting is right now, I think the technology is catching up. But I also think that the municipalities are looking for a bigger tax base and looking to receive the money that they might not have been able to collect in the past. And with budget shortfalls, there's additional attention that's occurring to get more tax revenue through short-term rentals. I've got to imagine that the hotel industry is also probably shining the light on these short-term rentals as well, because let's face it, if someone's renting out a home or a condo down the street from a hotel, it's likely to impact their sales as well. So there's a lot of energy around solving this, if that's the word you want to use for it, or bringing attention to making sure that everybody pays their taxes on these short-term rentals. Florida-based, if and probably most other places, I would think, is that a short-term rental would be defined as something less than 6 months. And in many areas, if it's less than 6 months of a rental, there could be additional taxes due. And that could be either to the state, the county, the city. Each market may be a little bit different, but let's just define it as less than 6 months as a short-term rental and some additional taxes due. There's a thing, Florida-based business tax licenses, BTRs, things like that. What they're saying is, if you have a rental property and you're going to do short-term rentals or maybe any kind of rental, then you need to register it with the city. It would also follow you to register that property, get that rental license through the county. And if it's short-term, there's actually like a hotel type of a license, and you could look it up. But just think of this: city, county, state. Likely, there's going to be some sort of a registration for most properties. Not necessarily all of those, but some. Some cities in Florida don't have anything on the books about short-term rentals, as far as you can or cannot do that. The eligibility is a whole separate topic, and I mean, we can go for hours on this one. But as far as the revenue due on these short-term rentals, think of how these are going to be collected and then who gets it. And if you register, you get to find some way to pay them. In most cases, people either didn't know or chose not to get their rental licenses in place, and there wasn't much energy being committed to catching those people, if that's the word you want to use. Except for now they are. There's these outside companies that are registration companies, and I've had some experiences with this year with this, and I work with enough people that are familiar with. They've got the city, the county, and the state license, completely unaware that there was a registration company at the city level where a third-party vendor company would actually handle the registrations and collect an additional fee. So in many areas now, there's, let's say, 4 different fees due and 4 different licenses due, or 3 licenses and a registration. There's a lot of layers to it. And what's happening now is, because they have this registration place collecting a fee, now there is revenue to go out and find more people that are renting without the right licenses. They're the ones getting the cease and desist licenses. There's letters. They're the ones that are now under pressure, and it's creating a little bit different rental market. If you can imagine, somebody's got a short-term rental that's fully furnished, right down to maybe the silverware. That's a good rental for a vacation. But what if that person who is renting it, quietly under the radar, maybe toes right up to the line, so to speak? What if they got that nasty gram and says, listen, you are in violation. You cannot do short-term rentals. This area is not zoned for it. So not only are you doing something under the radar, it's not even available. It's not a situation where you can, okay, look, we caught you. Go get your city license, go get your county, go get your state, and then continue. Just pay your taxes, continue what you're doing. If it's not available and not in the books that you can actually do it through zoning, now you have a situation where your only option is a long-term rental, move into the home yourself, or sell it. There's not, or I guess you could leave it empty and get no revenue. I guess there's 4 options. So knowing that most people don't want to leave it empty with no revenue, and if they choose not to sell it, the next likely option is they're going to rent it long-term. And now we have the situation where it's fully furnished. They don't necessarily want to sell that furniture and use furniture. I mean, it's pennies on the dollar. It's really expensive to buy it. And, there's not a lot of outlets buying used furniture these days because what we have right now is a growing number of rental properties where the owner is contacting management companies or themselves. You're seeing many, many more homes and condos being rented fully furnished. And you have to think about, what does that target audience look like? You see, most people have some stuff. So if you're renting a fully furnished place for you to go live into, you either are going to have a really crowded house trying to fit your stuff in there too, or you're going to sell off your worldly possessions, so to speak, or put it in storage and pay for storage as well, which is an additional fee. So it's an interesting thing that we're noticing right now. And that target audience for these rentals that used to be short-term, now are long-term, fully furnished, really is contract work. Someone's going to come in for, not 2 or 3 months, but at least 6 months to rent the property out. They want it fully furnished. They're not going to bring their worldly possessions with them. They plan to spend at least 6 months, maybe a year, in a different city or a different location for some sort of work or pleasure where they don't need to bring their furniture on. Just pack a suitcase like you're going on vacation, use all of our furniture, and as opposed to renting a hotel room or a suite, you just rent out a house for 6 months or a year. Except for what we find is the supply right now for fully furnished rentals is greater than the number of people that actually want to do that. So there's going to be a little dynamic change within the rental market, just as far as the short-term rentals versus the long-term. There's going to be an oversupply of fully furnished long-term rentals. That's already occurring right now. And it's interesting that you would think a fully furnished place might actually rent for more money, and in some cases is renting for less. And this is, let's not get it twisted. Let's talk about why. You've got a fully furnished place, and the person who wants to rent it out has furniture, and this is the best place for them. It's going to cost them money to put their stuff into storage. And if the owner of the property that was short-term rental that wants to get somebody there fully furnished who has to pay for rental, they're actually taking a little less money to have it fully furnished because of the oversupply of those type of properties, then more money. And it's a bit of a mind twist for someone who's got this property used to getting the short-term rental rates, which could absolutely add up to more over the course of a month than a level long-term renter. A $2,000 rental long-term might be $2,500 a month. So it's an income sacrifice, but they may not even get the $2,000 because it's fully furnished. They may have to rent it at 18 or 19 or something like that. So they'll have to further discount it to keep their furniture in there, which begs the question, do you just sell the furniture? Do you get rid of it? Do you let them bring their own furniture in? If you're selling it for pennies on the dollar, are you keeping that furniture in the hopes that the rental laws change, you can go back to short-term rental? Or are you going to reposition that furniture into a different rental that you purchase that allows short-term rentals? And will it fit? And what does it cost to move it? So there's all these pieces within it, which are adding some layers of complexity for those that were in the short-term rental market that may have slid by unnoticed and rented short-term work without a license, or perhaps in an area where it actually wasn't legit to do it. And I'm not judge and jury on this. I don't have the desire to police this personally, but I find it interesting that the calls that we're receiving in our businesses and the conversations are having for those that we consult with are very clearly having this conversation and talking about this conundrum. So what do? We bought this property. We were under advised. We thought we could do short-term rentals. Nobody told us we couldn't. We did it for 6 months. We got caught. Now we've got all this furniture, bought this property. It doesn't, the numbers don't work for long-term rentals. What do we do? So that's one of the things that we're going to experience on an ever-increasing basis as the technology piece increases, as these cities and municipalities, these third-party vendors that with registering these short-term rental properties, as they gain more usage and more power and more people, they'll be able to go on these sites and, and I can already see how this is playing out. If a neighbor happens to say they're doing short-term rentals and they turn them in, once they know there's a place to turn them into, that will increase the policing of it, so to speak. There's also going to be more labor available, more resources available to just go to the site and call up and says, listen, I see that you've got this property available for short-term rental. I'd like to rent it for a week, dot, dot, dot. And they'll say, oh, sure, you can do that. Send over the paperwork. And then, there's the mousetrap. I got you. So it's come to our attention that you're doing short-term rentals. Here's a copy of the agreement. The minimum rental in our municipality or city is 6 months. Here's your cease and desist letter. So as they have more resources and more people actually attempt to book short-term rentals where they're not allowed, you see, this is where it's happening. Or they can look up the address and quickly see that here's a rental on a short-term rental website, and they click in the address in their database because now they have this resource. Hey, that's an unlicensed property. We should give them a call, or we can slap them with a licensing fee. So there will be an ever-increasing amount of revenue available to police this. So does it mean they're going to catch it all? Oh, good God, no. I don't think there's enough energy and time to catch it all, but I think it's going to be enough out there where it's going to catch more and more people with it, because it's, in essence, it's, I'm going to call it a profit center. It's a tax center, and it's unrealized revenue for municipalities and cities and states and counties that are underfunded. They're overspent. They need revenue. This is an easy get for them. And now that the wheels are moving towards it, I think you'll see more of it. So it's not the end of short-term rentals. It's just an increase in the regulation of it. And I thought it was a really interesting piece to work on this week because we hear it so much. And if you were in this situation and got questions about this, it's absolutely something you can comment on, and definitely something to subscribe for. We've got more answers, so we can absolutely go deeper. But for today, I just wanted to make sure that we talked about how the short-term rental industry is evolving, because it's a hot market and there's more money, more energy, and more attention going into it. And I believe that with, eyes wide open and at least seeing this, it will help make, everybody make better decisions with more information. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do short-term rentals. It's just once you understand the dynamics of it, it's going to help position you to which is the right property and at least know what to look for. I hope you enjoyed this one about short-term rentals. This is Ron Wysokarski for the Black Hole of Real Estate.